So I'm Joseph Taylor. I'm going to start talking a little bit about my journey to where I am right now. And that really all started when I was about 7 years old. I used to be babysat by my auntie and my cousin next door during the summer while my parents were working. And my cousin Victoria went to dance classes. And I was quite intrigued by that. I would ask her what she learnt today and ask her if she could teach me. And so on, and that eventually led to me going to watch her classes. By watch, I mean peer from around a door. As I was terrified of the dance studio, I really wanted to be in there, but I was so shy that I, didn't let myself. Something was pushing me back at the same time. So I guess after a while of that, I eventually plucked up the courage to sit at the front of the room and watch, and then that turned into me taking part in the class, or classes rather. But I had a lot of indecision as a child, and I stopped and I started. I wanted to do it, I didn't want to do it, something put me off. I remember doing one show in our local park where I was dressed as a clown, and I hated it, and I ran off, and my dance teacher had to chase me out of the park to get me to come back. So it wasn't always straightforward, and that's how it continued to be. So my dance teacher suggested that I audition for the Royal Ballet Associate Programme, and I was accepted onto that, the Junior Associates. I went to the classes in Manchester. I'm from Skegness on the East Coast, but had family in Manchester, so my parents thought that was the easiest option for us, as I would have to drive all the way over there on a Saturday for classes once a month. This then snowballed into auditioning for the Royal Ballet School itself when I was 11 years old. I did the audition in my Junior Associates teaching shoes, as my dad had locked the keys in the car with all of my ballet stuff in. But I somehow managed to get offered a place at the school. I went when I was 11, but I didn't last very long. I was there 2 weeks. I think I made the big mistake of coming home the first weekend. It was like something I'd never known. I come from a very small town on the East Coast. It's very vibrant, lots of things to do, lots of tourists. And then to be in a hunting lodge in the middle of Richmond Park, it was such a huge contrast. I had no idea that I wanted to be a dancer and what being a dancer even meant and what this career could be. So I came home and went back the next week after my parents told me not to say this, but they locked me in the car to get me there. And I think it was all just a bit too much. The shock of being away from home and making lots of new friends, I don't think it was the right fit for me. So I moved back home and went back into normal school, but I did continue on to do the mid-associates and the senior associates, this time in London at the Royal Ballet Upper School. So my parents would drive me on a Saturday morning. I was also very reluctant to be getting up as a teenager on a Saturday morning, to be driven an hour and a half to Peterborough and then an hour on the train to do a ballet class, and then go all the way back that night every weekend. But I'm really glad that I stuck it out, and my parents encouraged me to keep on with it, because at 16 I then did the next round of auditions and was given a place to Elmhurst Ballet School under the directorship of Desmond Kelly at the time. All my classmates had been in vocational training for 5 years. I was playing catch up, I was the underdog, working extra hard. I was doing the classes with the year 10 pupils and the sixth form pupils every day so that I could build up my technique and strength, as I'd missed out on so much training in those formative years as my body was growing. I did 3 years there. I then moved to Northern Ballet upon graduation, as David Nixon had come to watch the graduate class at Elmhurst. He invited me to come up to Leeds and take class with the company and introduced me to the world up there a little bit. It was my first time in Leeds. I'd never seen Northern Ballet perform before. And after these few days, he offered me an apprenticeship with the company. So I was thrown straight into company life at 19. Still all a bit confused as to what was happening to me. I felt like I got there, I hadn't really made any plans or decisions, I was just going with the flow. And 13 years later, I've just done my final show with Northern Ballet after what had been an incredible whirlwind of experiences, trials, tribulations, like everything you can imagine I went through in those 13 years. Especially with David Nixon being the director, he really saw something in me which I don't think I even knew I had or had the potential to be. But I was put in this encouraging environment surrounded by lots of older dancers who blew me away with their artistry. I felt definitely like a fish out of water, but it only encouraged me to grow harder, stronger and faster. And I really owe a lot to him. I will forever be in debt to him because he turned me into what I am today. It wasn't on my radar to go to Northern Ballet. I really had thought that companies in the UK were way out of my league. So I had done a huge open audition in Berlin where there was about 200 dancers. I was cut straight from the bar. It was a terrible experience. I also auditioned at Estonian National Ballet and I ended up getting a job there, and I thought that's where I was going to go until David turned up at Elmhurst, and that all came to fruition with Northern Ballet. So I've danced most of the roles in Northern Ballet's repertoire. Still a few I would like to do. But yeah, I got given my first principal role in my second year of the company. I was an apprentice my first year, so in my second season I was first year corps de ballet, and I'd been given a principal role in David Nixon's Cleopatra. It's a ballet I hadn't seen before, but I'd heard a lot about as the company had just created it the season before I joined. So the whole company knew the ballet, apart from me and a few other new joiners. So it was a huge risk for David to give me this opportunity. I was dancing the role of Wadjet, which is this snake god. He dances from the beginning of the ballet to the end of the ballet with Cleopatra. Lots of big lifts and heavy partnering. So very exposing, but a great challenge. Yeah, that was my second year. That's also one of the roles that I would really love to do again, because I was so young at the time. I was almost, in a way, not aware of what was happening. I was so focused on doing the correct steps and being in the right place, moving the right set if needs be, that I almost wasn't as present as I would have liked to have been, or as I've been later on in my career with other roles. So that is a dream of mine, to be able to do that production again, having done it at the very start of my career. And how would I approach the role now, and how my strengths have evolved? You know, where would it take me, and where would the story go for me this time? So that's a dream of mine, to repeat that role. One of my biggest roles is maybe Jay Gatsby in David Nixon's The Great Gatsby. David created The Great Gatsby in my first season, in the spring of my first season. And that was when I really learned what Northern Ballet was. We were on the road for 9 weeks, 9 different venues. We had 4 different casts. I would have been doing something slightly different in every show. Knackered. The routine was such a shock to my system, and I was watching everybody else around me just sort of like embody this ballet and the story and give 100% every night, whether they were doing the principal role in the evening and then on the Saturday matinee doing a waiter or a butler. You know, everyone was working so hard, and I just thought, you know, this is how I need to work. I need to learn from these people. So that really was quite a shock. It was an eye-opener. And over the years, I performed many different roles in the ballet and covered a few of the other bigger roles. But I eventually became, I think I was principal soloist at the time when I danced Jay Gatsby for the first time with one of my long-term partners, Abby Prudames. It was a huge dream. We were in Edinburgh, I remember it very clearly. We actually had a post-show meet and greet or a talk with the audience after the show, and nobody could believe that it was our first show. But I guess we just put our hearts and souls into every single rehearsal, that by the time we get on stage, it had already been like we danced it a million times. So that was definitely a career highlight and something I look back on with fond memories. I've danced the role with also Dominique LaRose at Northern Ballet a few years later, so it's something I've seen from different angles, different perspectives. It's a story that involves many different characters, and all of their stories interlink so much that actually doing character roles or soloist roles really informs how you might portray a principal role like Jay Gatsby. I've also worked with Kenneth Tyndall quite a bit on his creation of Casanova, when he created that in around 2018, more or less, don't quote me. I was first cast in the Corps de Ballet and third cast Casanova, and that was physically one of the biggest challenges I've had in my career. We have 3 different partners in the ballet throughout Giacomo's story, all huge pas de deux, off balance, pressage, you name it, we were doing it. And now I'd be doing my principal show on the Saturday matinee and then my Corps de Ballet in the evening. So again, it was a grueling period of time, but I know for sure that these moments are where I've grown the most and improved, strengthened my artistry and my technique. But I have done a lot of partnering. David gave me the role in my second year to be trusted to lift the soloist principal women in the company when I was just 20 years old. I think I've just been thrown into it that I've had to learn on the spot, and every single role that's come thereafter has only improved my ability and informed my next role. It's something I really enjoy. I love, touch wood, I don't think I've dropped anybody. I've had my fair share of mistakes and having to rescue something in the moment, either on stage or in the studio. But actually mistakes are where you learn the most. It almost gets to a point where we need to figure out what might go wrong to be able to ensure that it doesn't go wrong again, and we know how to save it if something does happen, because we do a live performance every night. We rehearse as much as we can, but there are so many possibilities that you just need to be ready for anything. After David left, the company was taken over by Federico Bonelli, and he has been my director for the past 3 years. Under his directorship, I've had the opportunity to dance some of Northern's older repertoire back from when the company was known as Northern Ballet Theatre. So productions like A Christmas Carol and Massimo Morricone's Romeo and Juliet. Romeo is one of those roles that every dancer wants to play. The arc of his story is just like none other. I'd not played many hugely emotional roles that involve so much death. So this was a new experience for me, and I felt like I was in the right place in my career to embody such raw emotions on stage and with my partner. About 3 years ago, a colleague of mine had been invited to do a production, or a short project rather, with Christopher Marnie, but he wasn't able to do this. The dates didn't work out for him, and I jokingly said, "Oh, why didn't you put my name forward?" And he did, and I got contacted by Chris to come down to London to meet him, for him to tell me about this project, about staging a lost Macmillan ballet, which we did over the period of about a week to restage this lost work by Kenneth with the support of the Macmillan Foundation. And after this, Chris said, I want to talk to you about a bigger project. And that bigger project happened to be the resurrection of London City Ballet, which was happening the following year, and that he would love me to be a part of it. Without question, I said, where do I sign? But I need to talk to my director, which was Federico Bonelli at that time. We managed to work out some conditions where I'd do some back and forth, come down to London to work with London City Ballet, but also have time to rehearse and perform with Northern Ballet on tour in various locations at the same time. So I was prepared for a lot of work, working for two companies, one that I knew very well and one that I didn't know at all. So I had a lot to learn. I had also the sense of having to prove myself to Chris, to show that I was capable of doing the work that he wanted to put out there on stage. It was lots of repertoire that I didn't know, choreographers that I hadn't worked with before, and it lit this like hunger inside of me to say yes to everything. I'd had, maybe the year before I worked with Chris for the first time, I'd had what I was calling a mid-career crisis, where I didn't know where my career was going and what I should do next. I'd found myself repeating a few productions at Northern Ballet, and some of them that were maybe in the pipeline were ones that I knew that I didn't really want to do again. So actually at that time I had gone off and done a few auditions to see what may or may not be out there for me. Lo and behold, 6 months later, Chris is emailing me to come and work for him. So the timing was just absolutely perfect for me. And I feel so inspired by Chris, everything that he's doing with this company. He has such a personal connection to the company, as well as they were the company that toured towards where he lived in Essex, I think, East London. So it feels really inspiring to be down here working with London City Ballet, and it's just a pleasure every single day. Every challenge that's thrown my way, I just want to take it. I know that the analogy of like a sponge soaking water, that's just how I see myself. I want to be the sponge that can absorb the most from this like incredible art form. Working with Alexei Ratmansky on pictures at an exhibition was, like many things with London City, dreams that I never allowed myself to dream. I was fearful of setting myself up for disappointment, so I was trying to be happy with where I was and what I was doing, but these options that Chris was bringing my way for his company were just like unbelievable. So to be working with such a legend was incredibly nerve-wracking. We had the ballet staged on us by Amar Ramazar for 3 weeks before Alexei actually turned up into the studio, and we were all learning several different roles. I think I was covering about 3 roles in the ballet, and I wasn't sure which was going to be my role, which one I should focus on more or not. But I ended up doing the Sorcerer solo, which was actually Amar's. He was the creative cast of that particular spot, so it was absolutely perfect that he was here staging the ballet on us. And I think I surprised people with the speed at which I can move. I definitely prefer moving slower. I feel like I have more time to think and to control. But actually both Alexei and Amar pushed us all so much as a company that you could see everybody improving every single day. And I really felt that from within myself as well. The solo is hugely dynamic, very fast, all different shapes, all different directions. I don't think I breathe for about the 1 minute 30 seconds of the solo, and then I have to sit on stage at the back trying to hide while I catch my breath. So it was a huge challenge, a huge honor, something that I enjoyed every single time on stage. We did many, many shows last year, and performing it both at Sadler's Wells and at the Limbury Theatre at the Royal Opera House was just fantastic. The audience absolutely loved it, and it makes it so worthwhile when it's appreciated like that, because we're sweating and working so hard. At the end of the 35 minutes, you look at the stage and there's just pools of sweat all over the place. So it's definitely a huge challenge, but again, one that I hope that I've only grown from and can take lessons from into my next big challenge. So I've danced Constellations by Liam Scarlett, which was the first time I was doing something by Liam. It was a hugely insightful experience. We had Laura Moreira from the Royal Ballet staging the ballet on us. She was the original cast of the third pas de deux from the piece, so she knew it like the back of her hand and had very fond but also emotional memories from the ballet. It has quite a poignant story, and I feel we did it justice as a company. We got to perform many times. Each time it was a different journey. I did 2 different duets within the ballet, so again I got to play these characters at different moments in their lives with different ballerinas through the company. So yeah, a great experience. There's no real pantomime in Liam's work. It's all the emotion comes from within, and it's told through the quality of your movement and how the limbs react to different expressions. So it's quite intricate, but I hope that the audience can read everything that we're trying to portray. Music and musicality was something that I struggled with early on in my career. I would religiously learn the counts and listen to the music at home and try and understand everything that the repetiteur or the stager was saying and absolutely get it correct and spot on. I think maybe this came from not wanting to make a mistake or stand out from the wrong reasons. But I have always had a sense of music moving me, and music makes me feel something. It makes me want to dance. I can't play an instrument, I'm not musical in that way, but it gives you a strong sense of feeling, and I always try to lead with that kind of feeling. I'm not the most technically secure dancer, but I try to do everything from a genuine, honest place of emotion, and I really feel like that helps me deliver a solid performance. It might not always be You might not always be dancing like double tours and pirouettes, but sometimes the simplest things can have the strongest effect. I would like to thank everyone at Northern Ballet who really taught me artistry, because at Northern I have and they do so many unique and unconventional stories that I really feel that I'm ready for anything now. I spent a lot of my younger career portraying roles of a much older man, so I was always being told to slow down and put weight into the movement, and I was always like, oh, but I'm ready, I want to do it better, I want to work harder, and that wasn't always the case. So I learned a lot of lessons through my early years. I definitely do lots of strengthening and conditioning. I go to the gym. Sometimes it takes me a long time to get to the gym, even if it's only just next door or around the corner. I can procrastinate quite a bit. But I definitely use it to strengthen my dancing. But I do believe as much as you isolate certain muscle groups, you really have to put that into practice in the studio. The studio is where you refine and prepare yourself for the difficulty of a 2-hour production. So this coming season with London City Ballet in 2026, we will be repeating some repertoire from the previous season, but also we will be adding 3 new works. We will be doing Mephisto Waltz by Ashley Page. We've done another one of his ballets for the past 2 seasons. So it'll be really great to work with him again. He's a joy in the studio, passionate as ever, so I'm really excited for that. We are doing a revival of a Glenn Tetley ballet that he created on the Royal Danish Ballet, which is his Firebird, which I'm really, really intrigued by. I don't know much about it. There's one video on YouTube. I think Royal Danish are the only company to have performed it. So there's a bit of an unknown. I think that's going to take quite a bit of staging, lots of help from various people. But I'm really looking forward to adding another choreographer to my list. And then the third piece will be Ghost Light by John Neumeier. And this is something that I'm really scared to talk about because, again, it's one of those dreams that I could never have imagined coming true. I've never seen his work live because it's very rarely performed in the UK. I think maybe once in the past 15 years. So the only source to his work I've had is YouTube. And I sometimes go down like a rabbit hole of his work, and one of his pieces, Third Symphony of Mahler, it's like therapy for me in a way. I just sometimes put that on. It's a beautiful pas de deux when I need inspiration, when I'm feeling down, when I'm feeling great. Like, it's something that brings me so much joy. It gives me the same feeling as like looking out to a crystal clear blue ocean. So I'm just eager to get started on that. And it's,